Hello, everyone. Nael Shahbaz here. Today, my guest is Hassan Rizvi. He is an account executive at Slack. Welcome, Hassan. How are you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Niall. This is, I guess, my first opportunity to be on a podcast, and you just said it well that a podcast is just a fancy word for a conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah. First, tell me, how are you doing? You mentioned you got COVID. So, how are you coping? How's your health?
Much better now. Thank you for asking, and thank you for the message while I was out of office. Honestly, it didn't really hit me all that hard. It was just the day we were supposed to chat last, my voice was pretty much shot. And for a podcast of anything, I think it's probably important to have a decent voice. So yeah, thank you for the flexibility and for asking as well.
Was it your first time catching COVID, or is it?
That I know of, yeah. I have been sick a couple of times since the pandemic started, but nothing quite like this, and nothing where it was like the specific symptoms. So this was the first time.
All right, perfect. Good to know that. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, your voice sounds strong. So whatever. So you recovered fully, right? Or is it just
Yes,
kind of
to
the
my knowledge at
tremors?
least.
Oh, okay. So can you? Is it the same as smell, taste, just goes away?
For
in
me,
this?
it was really just my voice, and my throat was sore.
Oh.
But besides that, it wasn't all that bad, and even that only lasted for a couple of days. Thankfully, and I'm sure we'll speak about this as well with Slack and with Salesforce, we have the ability to work remotely. So I was back on my laptop pretty quick. But yeah, in terms of customer conversations and getting in front of people, it just took a couple of days to recover.
Okay, great. All right. First question. What are your responsibilities at Slack? What is it exactly do you do there?
Yeah, so I think an account executive is kind of also just like a fancy word, typically, which means a salesperson. I think in terms of Slack specifically and the Salesforce ecosystem that we fall into, an account executive, if there was one word to encompass it, would be more heavily towards relationships than sales. So the way that means for me is working with 300 to 500 Canadian businesses across the country, and just really making personal connections with as many folks as I can. So speaking with people who are tech leaders, marketing leaders, sales leaders across all different lines of businesses at the customers that I'm dealing with, getting a personal understanding of what's going on in their life, how I can align with their priorities on the business side and on the personal side, and ultimately trying to find a solution, whether that be at Slack or otherwise, to help kind of make their life easier. I think a simple way to put it that Slack uses is making their life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. That essentially encompasses what I do for a living.
Does that get difficult? I mean, even essentially, you're the salesperson. So as you said, account executive is a fancy word. So establishing a relationship with people do get you. Hey, this is the salesperson. He's gonna sell something, and then you have to establish the relationship. Doesn't it get difficult?
Yeah, I think every situation is different. When you come into it with an approach of not, hey, here's my product, this is how I'm going to help you, but rather when you come in with genuine curiosity and you're coming more as almost like an external advisor for their business rather than someone who's coming with another product, which I'm sure they have 40, 50 products that are already being pitched to them on an annual basis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if you can differentiate yourself in a number of different ways, I think what I try to do is take less of a transactional approach and more of a human-centric approach. So when I'm looking out for people who I'm going to reach out to, I'll first do my own bit of research on the business, and then I try to align things that I found interesting with specific people. So whether it be the CEO or president or someone in the C-suite who is on a podcast, such as something like this, or who wrote an article in a newspaper locally, or something that piques my interest, I'll use that as a cue that I can then reach out regarding that, rather than just, here's my product. And then the other thing that I try to do when I'm reaching out is not just reach out so that I can get some interest from it and understand their business, but to try to deliver some value to them. I try to make sure that it's mutually beneficial for both parties so that I'm getting something out of it, which is my business intel and understanding how their business is operating and if there's something that Slack can do for them. And for them as well, with their current operations, with their current strategy, if there's something that I can deliver to them based off what other folks in the industry are doing, trends that we're seeing, or a solution that we might have. So trying to keep it mutually beneficial for everyone.
Did you learn this approach on your own, or was it trained by Slack, or did you read marketing books that, hey, you don't have to be upfront, hey, buy my product. Instead, you actually understand and actually deliver value. That's what marketing is supposed to be. So where did you get this insight? Let's just call it that.
I think a little bit of everything. First off, definitely failing a lot of times and figuring out that whatever approach I was taking was not right and having to rescale that. Before coming to Slack, I was in commercial finance, so still working on the customer side and working with businesses across Canada. So although this is a different industry, a different product altogether, the approach of delivering value and having a solution for my customers is not something that's new to me. So really just failing a whole bunch of times and figuring out that I need to rework my strategy and understand that if I'm just reaching out to say, hey, here's something I can do, or I'd love to get in touch with you and understand something for me, essentially, there's going to be no value to the customer. So that's never going to work. And then secondly, something that I think is my strong suit outside of work and outside of conversations with customers is making a personal relationship and having a personal understanding with the person who I'm speaking to. So that comes naturally, even if it's just getting on a call and having a general conversation. It also kind of just like kills any tension that might be there prior to having the conversation and makes a personable relationship. In future calls, you can then speak to things that you learned about the person early on, or I know I have some customer who love to go hiking and whatnot. So when I go on really great hikes or I'm vacationing and I see something, I'll take a picture and send it to them later. It's something to just build a personal relationship outside of work. Because for me as well, it makes my life a lot more enjoyable where I don't feel like I'm just pushing something out to them and I'm really building a friendship or a relationship that way.
Yeah, and the way I see it, like marketing or sales, is like I am actually describing as something that they actually need. Yes, there's like the initial barrier. I know someone is coming to sell me something, but what if it's something I actually need? So I have to describe it that in a way. Anyways, tell me about prospecting. Have you discovered any secrets to prospect?
I wish there was a hidden nugget,
formula.
a gold nugget that I had. Yeah, exactly. I think what works for me is a very omni-channel approach. So using a variety of different methods to get in touch with different folks. And the biggest thing is using what my customer prefers. So in my conversations, and this is assuming that I'm able to book a meeting and get in front of someone, one of the first questions I'll always ask is, what is your preferred medium of communication? Does that mean that we spin up a Slack Connect channel and we speak over Slack? Or should I get your phone number and should I text you back and forth? Or should we keep it over email? So just having a variety of different communication methods, that's definitely an important one. And understanding that if someone doesn't pick up my call or doesn't reply to my email, all that might mean is the fact that I'm reaching out on the wrong medium of communication. So keeping a tracking method of where I'm reaching out to people and what's working and what isn't working, and then adjusting that always works for me. I've had customers who I'll take it as though they're not interested by not responding via one method. And then coincidentally, I'll just kind of think to do it a different way on a different day. And that clicks right away. And I build a really great relationship and I'm able to have a great conversation that way. So it might just be timing. It might just be the method of communication that I used. I think the other thing is just persistence, really, not giving up. And unless someone tells you no, there might still be a conversation that's there. And you said it great. A lot of the times the customer themselves might not realize this is something that they need. And if you come off as salesy or you catch them on a bad day or whatever the reason might be, it might just be no at that time versus no, I don't truly need this product.
I want to go back to what you said. You try to build connection with people. That's your like strong suit. Do you attend seminars and these networking events and these road shows, exhibitions, and do you network there? How do you feel? Do you feel as comfortable as on the phone, or is it different? So
I love doing that. I used to do it prior to COVID, with everything being largely remote now. Honestly, I haven't really been to very many in-person events ever since starting to work from home. But we do now have the option to start meeting customers face to face. So even if it means going to a customer's office or taking them out for a coffee or just popping into their office for a little while, I think that goes a really long way, whether or not you talk about your product and you talk about what you have to offer, even if it's literally just, hey, I'm in the neighborhood. What do you drink at Tim Hortons, and dropping off a coffee for them. It goes a really long way. Tim Hortons might be very specialized to Canada, but that's our local coffee shop.
okay, how do you keep customers happy?
You try your best. You may or may not. But again, if you're able to deliver on a personable experience and you're able to make a personal connection, I think you have a much greater chance of that happening. So reaching out, keeping communication as wide open as possible.
I mean, look at us. We're having a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I hope I'm doing something right then.
Yes,
but yeah, really, I appreciate it. But really just keeping communication open. If you make any promises or commitments to your customer, making sure you deliver on that and prioritizing their needs. At the end of the day, their satisfaction is what pays my bills. So making sure that I'm placing them at the highest priority as possible, and just delivering on anything that I can. And then at the same time, aligning with their priorities. So in those initial conversations, understanding their business model, understanding what will make their life easier, and whether that be something with Slack or a news article that I come across or a new product that I think might be relevant to their business, just providing a solution at any time.
Great. What is Slack working on these days? A new product or a feature that you're excited about? And would you like to share details?
I think this might have been a little bit of a miscommunication in my emails where I made it sound like we have a specific product being launched. Rather than that, we were acquired last year. I'm saying last year all the time now, and I'm realizing it might have been late 2020 now, but we were acquired by Salesforce. And we're now in the Salesforce ecosystem. So Salesforce being a giant of 70,000 plus employees, and Slack just being one little speck in that giant ecosystem. Slack being so powerful as it is, has some integrations with Salesforce directly. But I think the biggest thing and the most exciting thing that we have on the roadmap, and we're still kind of finding out about this as it rolls out, are the integrations with Salesforce directly, and how Salesforce is taking a Slack first approach to all of their tools. So with their sales tools, their marketing tools, their service clouds, all of the clouds essentially, rolling them out to be Slack integrated and Slack first, so that we can drive business through Salesforce while still connecting everything in Slack, and ultimately creating one digital headquarters or ecosystem for everything. And I think that's what's most exciting are the rollouts that we've seen in the past couple of weeks. We had Frontiers, which is Slack's biggest event of the year, where there are some product announcements and whatnot. And there were some features that were revealed there. Like, for example, we're doing a Zoom call today, but we do have a huddles feature native to Slack where you can just get on a call with someone. And now we have a video option there. There's the option to spin up a separate thread in that conversation, which is effectively a channel after the call is done. And you can keep all of your conversations, versus in this, if we were to DM each other on Zoom and this conversation ends, that conversation ends as well. So just essentially spinning it into a new channel. So some small features that were added at Frontiers this year, but I think the bigger approach is the collaboration with Salesforce.
By the way, I think it gets very difficult once you get habitual of a system. Say, if I'm using Slack or my company, someone else pitches me, hey, use this chat bot or chat platform, it's going to be very difficult. So same is the case. We're kind of used to Zoom, and yes, Huddle is great for Slack, but there has to be a transition. So maybe it's like both. So you just click one button, it's integrated into Zoom, and gradually you push us towards the typical Huddle, or maybe the recording duration increases over there. So maybe that's going to be a smooth transition. So
100%. Even on our end, we're using Zoom for internal conversations still. We have the Huddle functionality. So if there's someone on my team and I have a really quick question, I'll ping them and say, hey, do you want to jump on a Huddle, versus doing a formal Zoom call with a calendared invitation. But for our team meetings, for my customer conversations, for any external facing conversations, for the most part, we're also using Zoom. So I completely hear where you're coming from. And I think that's the natural progression, is where we're aiming to be at. But right now we acknowledge that Huddles is a great feature for instant conversations, versus Zoom is a greater platform, and there's other platforms for external facing communication. And hopefully one day we can kind of merge the two and create a one-stop solution.
I'm looking forward. Tell me about the competition. Microsoft Teams, Google Chat, and there's Rocket Chat. So how is Slack beating them? Let's just be straight.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing is we're viewed as a communication tool, and I think, a chat tool rather. And I think we're so much more than that, and that's what differentiates us. And I don't want to call out any other product, because there's so much to offer from each of those. But I think the unique offering that we have is having a collaboration platform. I may have said it earlier, but the way we see ourselves is a digital headquarters. So a one-stop shop for all your people, your systems, and your partners. So internal facing conversations with your people and your teams, you can do that in Slack today. For partners outside, so if you're speaking to vendors or customers or anyone on the outside facing, you can do that through Slack Connect. And then a one-stop shop for all your systems. For example, I got a reminder in my Google Calendar in Slack today that I have to join this call, and I clicked on that. If I were having yeah, I love that. And that's the only way where I stay accountable with my meetings. Outside of that, yesterday, I had an IT bug with something in one of my systems, and I spun up an IT ticket directly in Slack. So having a one-stop shop for any and all requests, and having to switch less between all the different platforms and applications. If I can just backslash and type Zoom and have a meeting pop up right away, it's so much easier for me than going to my Google Calendar and starting a new meeting and inviting everyone who I need to versus just doing it in a DM. So I think having a collaboration and communication tool is a lot more than just a chat tool. And for me, I think that's the value that we add. On top of that, having Salesforce behind us and all the integrations that have already been rolled out and will continue to be rolled out just makes our platform a lot more sound. And from what I've seen in the 9 months or so that I've been with Slack, and prior to that as well, just keeping up with the news, I think one of the things that differentiates Slack is just staying agile and staying innovative and always continuing to evolve the product in the right way. So I think that's really important for us.
I was going to ask, the next question was about the improvement in Slack or Salesforce. Well, let's just call it that. Now Salesforce is doing awesome, but the improvement, what are the improvements that you're looking forward? I think it's going to be mostly integrations with other apps and tools. Is that the way forward?
That's what we've seen. We have about 2,500 integrations ready to go out of the box. And then we have custom integrations as well that can always be built out. But we have constant new partnerships that are being signed with new vendors who are being added to our app directory. And that just makes our tool as well as their tools much more valuable. And to our customers, that's something that we speak to as well, is we're not here to be your only solution that you have, right? The value of Slack is tying it in with everything else that you already have and consolidating it into one space. So if we can continue to do that as we have in the past, I think there's a lot of value there. And like you said, just continuing to work with Salesforce in the larger ecosystem to evolve our product, I think that's the most value that we can provide.
How much do you think Slack has contributed in work from home? The system now, it's the hybrid system now. How much do you think it has? All over the world, people are using these tools, and without these, this could not have been possible considering the pandemic, the limitations. So what do you think the contribution?
I can speak for myself. I've done 4 different jobs at 2 different companies since COVID-19 started, and all of it was done through Slack. Everything was essentially possible through Slack. I'm working with people who are in Dublin, yourself in Pakistan, people across the world, and you don't even realize where they are, nor does it matter because you can work asynchronously. I can collaborate with people on mission specific tasks directly in Slack. I can have personable conversations with customers and with coworkers. I can share events from what I had on the weekend.
I also use it as a data storage as well, because all the files and audios and videos are sitting in Slack. So it also works perfectly. So I just can just go to that in conversation and add someone, so it works. So
yeah, that's a great way to use it. And I think our search functionality is huge as well in finding those things which you've sent over time and resharing them and using it as kind of like a database for everything that you have. Slack actually stands for, and I've never actually regurgitated this since my training, but it stands for Searchable Log of All Communications and Knowledge, which is the SLACK. And that speaks to, like you said, having everything kind of stored there and being able to access that knowledge. So much so that if I were to go into some of like the historical channels, like our announcements channels, and click beginning of time, which is one of the filters, I can actually see our president, our CEO having conversations when they were like literally in an apartment working in a team of 5 people, and their conversations from way back then, and just having the accessibility to all of that and visibility to all information is super huge.
Do you think it's going to turn into that metaverse Slack, this huge community of people and companies? Have you guys, I mean, you must have been thinking about it, the Slack people. So
yeah, I'm sure on the product side, I'm sure it's top of mind. I know, again, innovation is always top of mind at Slack and at Salesforce. I can't quite speak to it. I wish I could, but I don't quite have an answer on that specifically. But I think a community feel is very important for us. Outside of work, there's communities for everything, both at Slack and Salesforce, and even externally facing. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of layoffs here in the Canadian market with the way that the macroeconomics have been, and the economy just kind of taking a swing a little bit right now. And I've seen Slack channels put together for people who are coping with obviously being laid off together, support channels for people who are sharing jobs with each other. So there's workspaces built out for really anything and everything. We have channels from burritos to dogs and cats and everything you could think of in between. And the power of having a community in Slack is super, super powerful. And I think that's where, if it was to work out like you mentioned, then that's where it would be.
What kind of management style is in Slack? What kind of
Yeah.
management style do you guys follow?
We have very much like a team approach. I can reach out right now to our VP of Canada, who essentially is one of the more senior folks who I report to, and have him join me in a call in a couple of hours if it was something I was looking for. I could have my regional vice president who reports to the VP of Canada sync on a huddle right now if I needed to kind of joint brainstorm on a question or on a topic that we have. So we have very much like a teamwork approach of helping each other. I know I've been in corporate, I guess, environments in the past where it's been more cutthroat and people are kind of fighting for their jobs and fighting for each other's jobs. And we have much more of a support system here to kind of make sure that everyone is doing the best work that they can and supporting each other. So a great work culture here. We all love it. I can speak for myself. I love it. And having the support from our regional vice presidents, our vice presidents, the executives, having executives from different fields jump into our conversations and being aligned on things, and everyone just having visibility into the projects that are happening here. I think that's what sets us apart.
Which percentage of the sales, I wanted to say sales force, but not the sales force, like your people, the employees of Slack, how many do you think work from home and there's like the office and who come to office, considering that you guys contributed a lot in work from home culture? So what about the culture at Slack?
I would say the vast majority are at the very minimum hybrid, with a lot of people being remote. I know that in COVID, Salesforce put out a policy, which was that any employee can work remotely if that's what they're more comfortable with. And we've essentially still been exercising that. And then teams specifically, if they're comfortable with it, will start returning to the office. So my team, for example, we have the optional invitation to come into the office every other week. And most of us, just because we're a little bit sick of working from home with the office being so close by and looking forward to seeing each other now. We tend to go in.
Is real. Not the homesickness. Yeah, you get
sick of being at home.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, so we tend to go in every other week. I know for me, I try to go in every week, and it doesn't happen all that often. But when I go in, there's folks from a variety of different teams that are there, whether it be from IT or engineering or other sales teams. And it's great to see everyone. But in terms of formal policies, we do have the option to stay home if that's a comfort thing. And especially with people having moved outside of the greater cities that they were in to relocate where family and friends are and whatnot. A lot of people are kind of working off the grid in different places, and whatever works for their style and their teams is ultimately what's happening here.
So like with InvoZone, so there are certain meetings and talks you have to have in person. There's no way around it. So is it the same with Slack, especially when it comes to technology or product improvements or business plans? Is it done remotely, or do you guys like call everyone at the office? Hey, we got an important meeting, and everyone's sitting at the table. So is it conventional in certain aspects, in certain scenarios?
Yeah, I can only speak for my team, and I know that my team is definitely comfortable with meeting in person, and we have a number of times. So, like you said, for business review, where we have kind of all our teams sync for the beginning of the fiscal year or the second half of the year, and different timings where we need our team to be in person. As long as everyone's comfortable, we definitely do those in person as well. We have a large conference room at our office, and we typically will do that over a breakfast or a lunch and just kind of have everyone in one place. But yeah, it all really just boils down to comfort, as long as everyone is okay with that, given that there still is some uncertainty. And I know here in Canada, we just went through another wave of COVID. Who knows what wave we're on now? But we had an increased case count recently. So some folks are a little bit uncomfortable that way, but as any opportunity that we have to meet in person, we definitely do take advantage of that.
Do you follow Elon Musk on socials?
I did. I just switched cell phones. I just switched from Android to Apple. So I haven't downloaded Twitter on my new phone just yet. But yeah, I did.
He tweeted something like the work from home culture is bad for productivity. He wanted people to be in the office. Did you follow that? What do you think of that? What do you make of it? And there was another article. I'm forgetting the author's name. He's very famous, by the way. And he was also of the same opinion that you have to be a part of that office culture, the physical office one, to actually get something important done. What is your take on that?
I think I can say two things. I think one, when we look at that, for 2 years, or call it a year, even a year and a half, we didn't even have the option of going in, and a lot of businesses performed at all-time highs. with employee satisfaction, employee retention, with people just truly enjoying the work that they do even more. When we didn't have the option, I think that's when we showed that maybe we don't need to come into the office all that much. And when we have tools like Slack behind you, and you have remote work tooling to support you, regardless of where you are, whether you're traveling or you're working asynchronously, and you're connecting with your team and you're still getting everything that needs to be done. I think that kind of showed that that might not be the case. And who knows what the future holds, but at least for the present, in that time especially, it wasn't necessarily as required. I think the second side to it is when Elon Musk did say that, and I did see it a few weeks ago, where he made the announcement that all employees should be in the office, especially for the California folks. There was a ton of folks who left the business right away, and I think that speaks to the way that the work has shifted and the approach of employees has shifted. I know right now we're in a time where folks aren't staying in their job for very long because of the fact that there are costs with switching, and there's higher salaries at different places, and there's remote work options, and there's Slack first options, and there's all sorts of options out there with other employers. So as long as you're kind of accommodating to what your employees need to be as productive as they can be in whatever setting that might be, I think that's the most important. I personally still love going to the office, like I said, but if I can manage that with working from home as well, when I have a doctor's appointment the same day, or I have to drop my wife or pick her up from work the same day, or there's an issue with my car or something, and I just have the option to work in a hybrid environment for myself, I think that's what makes me the most productive, and I think that's common with a lot of folks.
Yeah. And when you get used to that lifestyle, it becomes very difficult to switch back to the conventional one. And I'm sure the people who actually quit, I'm talking about Elon Musk, because they couldn't go back. So they have made their appointments accordingly. So whether it's the bank or the doctor or whatever. So I think that's the issue. What do you think?
I think here as well, sorry to cut you off, I just wanted to mention here in the Canadian market as well, especially with housing in the very beginning of COVID, we saw our housing market in Toronto start to tank in the city, the core itself. And the suburbs is where it picked up because so many people also relocated far away from their offices. And now being called back to your office when you now live hours and hours away, or maybe not even in the same city, is a huge ask, right? So outside of just the personal commitments and appointments, like some folks are not physically able to even go into their office, and now are being told it's mandatory to be there. So yeah, definitely a big change, but I think having the option to work remotely has worked well for most people.
And do you think this is going to continue? Is the hybrid the actual future, or like 5 years down the road, the CEOs around the world, they're just going to say, oh, they've had enough, everyone be at the office?
I'm hoping that's not the case. I think it comes down to the company culture and the products that they have, and the way that their business is rolled out over the years. I think in some roles, it does make sense to be more in person than others. And you mentioned it well, like, for example, there are some conversations that are just better to have in person, and they have a lot more meaning when they're done in person, or more valuable. I think in sales, a lot of that is done as well. And in relationship building, having an in-person conversation is nowhere near having the same conversation over email or phone call or even Zoom. And this is a great tool that we have the option to at least see each other and view each other's expressions and whatnot. But being in person is an entirely different experience. So I'm of the impression that being in person has a ton of value. But I'm hoping at least that hybrid work at the very minimum remains a thing. And I know that in a lot of companies, in a lot of positions, I can speak for my dad, for example. Growing up, my dad worked hybrid for most of his life, where he was home for a ton of time, but then he was traveling to customers as well in the States and in South America and across the Americas for a couple of days at a time. And then he would be working from home after that. So hybrid work is not something that's new per se, but I think the rollout across so many different industries and so many different businesses, for example, when I was in banking, it was taboo to even take your laptop home and work at home. You just had to be in the office all the time. And like any email that had to be sent was pretty much done at the office. And if I asked for even a half day to work from home, and then deal with a personal appointment or something of that sort, it was like, just take the whole day off. There's no point even doing that. Whereas in the same time, right, in 2020 March, when COVID started, that same job, that same industry got shifted like crazy, and they had to shift to remote work as well. So I think it defied all odds. We were just forced into that, but we saw that the businesses can definitely still thrive.
Personally, I prefer working from the office. At least some part of the day I have to be. It's just like a habit, sort of. It's just like there's a checkbox, like I worked, or some sort of productivity. Maybe it's just all in the head, but that's the way it is for me. Especially, by the way, the training part. if I'm training someone, I would like to have them in person. And actually, a lot of trainers prefer that. Zoom trainings or Google Hangout training, you don't get the immediate feedback if the people are actually learning something. I don't know if that's a case all around, but for me, it is like in-person training works better than because you can tell if people are dozing off. You can tell them, hey, open your eyes.
Yeah, a little bit more like forced accountability by being in person, and I think you probably soak it up a lot faster than you would doing it online.
Exactly. Hassan, that was all the time we had. It was a pleasure talking to you. Great. Would love to have you again sometimes. So yeah, you have any questions? We can do the reverse podcast as well. You can put it on Slack.
I should have prepped it on my end, but I think the last question you asked me was pretty thought-provoking. I'm curious what you think the future of work looks like in the next couple of years, whether it be in person or remote, given that we both have a preference for being in the office from time to time, but I think we can both understand that hybrid has made our lives a lot easier. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yes, hybrid. I will go with that, because even if I love to be in the office, but I cannot be at like 9 to 6, every day. This cannot happen, because again, if I have a commitment, whether I have to go to a bank or a hospital, I would like to have that flexibility. So I think we're gonna meet like in the middle. Yes, hybrid, but then it has to be on certain terms where everyone is happy. So it's not like the boss tells you what to do or the employee says, I'm going to have it my way. So it's going to be in the middle, yes. And of course, it depends a lot on the culture. Some companies would love to have, like Elon Musk, if he says, yeah, people have to be in the office, they're going to be in the office. And what if you have hired people across the globe? What if you have a developer designer in Japan or Netherlands? So I mean, you have to let them work from their spaces. So I think it has to be hybrid, or a mix, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's insightful. I know my brother-in-law is going through a similar situation right now, where he's worked remotely prior to COVID and in COVID as well entirely. And now he's looking to move to Dubai purely like for quality of life. He grew up in Dubai as well. And right now he's going through a little bit of like an internal conflict at work, where they don't want to approve it, but at the same time, they have no reason not to, because he's been working virtually and his location is not dependent on where he is, as long as he's working in the time zones that they ask for and he's getting his work done as well. So I think as long as employers are able to accommodate what employees need to be most productive, I think that's what ultimately will decide the way that we go.
Do you have a proper office space in your home? Because you at least have to have that environment, or you just sit in your pajamas and in bed and have a laptop on, like the prospect.
I wish it was that easy, but because of the fact that I have my Zoom video on for most of my meetings, as long as there isn't like Wi-Fi issues at home, then yeah, I definitely have to get ready and take a shower every morning and put on some of these decent clothes at least. But yeah, I have a dedicated workspace here at home. I find for me, having a window is super helpful, and having some natural light keeps me from feeling tired. But yeah, I have a dedicated space here, and anytime I'm getting bored of it, that's when I go to the office.
Perfect. All right, man. Thank you so much. It was insightful, by the way. Got to learn a lot about Slack. So thank you so much, Hassan.
Thank you, Nael. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll get to talk again sometimes. All right, buddy. Take care.